Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining this exciting deep dive where we unravel one of the most astonishing, captivating, and mind-bending mysteries in modern coin collecting. Because today we are exploring the extraordinary story behind a 1992 P quarter dollar that collectors claim could soar to an unbelievable value of $15 million. Not because it was minted from some rare metal or belonged to an elite historical figure, but because of the incredible, unusual, and extremely rare errors and mistakes that have elevated this ordinary-looking coin into the realm of numismatic legend. And as we journey through this story, we're going to explore the twists and turns of how such an unassuming 25-cent piece became the focus of debates, fascination, and extreme treasure hunting fever. Because many collectors argue that if the right combination of minting anomalies occurred during its production at the Philadelphia Mint, the coin could theoretically command an astronomical price due to a mix of rarity, curiosity, and a massive excitement generated by unique mint deviations that often cause ordinary coins to skyrocket far beyond their face value. And so as we move forward, we will picture the bustling minting floor in 1992, where millions of quarters were struck during a time when the United States Mint had already transitioned away from silver for decades and was fully invested in copper-nickel-clad coinage. Yet despite the highly controlled environment, uniform machinery, and strict quality standards, mistakes still happened. And sometimes those mistakes happened at the perfect moment and in the perfect combination to produce something so unexpected that a coin instantly transforms from common pocket change into a sensational multi-million-dollar mystery. And in the case of the 1992 P quarter, the lore often revolves around the possibility of a dramatic misalignment error, an off-center strike so extreme and so cleanly executed that it displays the rendering of liberty and the inscriptions in a distorted yet remarkably clear fashion. A rare condition where the coin's features shift dramatically out of their intended positions, leaving collectors stunned by the accidental artistry created by the machine's malfunction. And this is only the beginning of what such a quarter might exhibit, because the story deepens as we imagine the possibility of a double strike layered on top of that initial misalignment, where the coin, after its first imperfect strike, fails to eject properly and receives a second impression with slightly rotated alignment, creating a ghost-like duplication of design elements that blend, overlap, or distort in ways that no normal quarter should, producing lettering that appears shadowed or doubled in fields where George Washington's profile subtly repeats in a mesmerizing and unmistakably rare pattern. And this combination alone could elevate a coin's desirability in the collector world. But what launches it into the mythical multi-million-dollar territory is the notion of even more spectacular and improbable errors stacking together, such as a broad strike that flattens the rim, expanding the coin's diameter beyond standard limits, and giving it a stretched appearance that increases the surreal impact of the misaligned features. Or even a partial collar strike, where the retaining ring fails to cradle the blank correctly, leading to slightly sloped or distorted edges that make the coin appear warped compared to its perfectly circular peers. And imagine all of these anomalies happening on a single piece during a moment of mechanical failure or misfeeding, creating a quarter that defies normal minting logic, a quarter that contains unmistakable physical evidence of the mint's fleeting lapse in precision. And now consider the tantalizing possibility of a planchet error on top of these striking mistakes, such as the coin being struck on a wrong metal planchet intended for a foreign coin or a different denomination, which has happened before in various years and mints. And although exceedingly rare, when such a planchet slip occurs, the resulting coin instantly becomes a sought-after marvel because its weight, color, or composition no longer matches that of the standard quarter, causing confusion, fascination, and skyrocketing value. And numismatists often dream of discovering coins struck on experimental or leftover planchets that somehow bypass the sorting process. And in the context of the 1992 P quarter, collectors theorize that if a blank intended for a different denomination or country had slipped into the minting line, the resulting coin might possess a slightly golden tint, a marginally lighter or heavier feel, or a distinct metallic resonance that reveals its anomalous composition, further pushing the coin into a league far beyond ordinary mint errors. And adding to all of this is the possibility that the dies used to strike the coin might have been mis-engraved or improperly polished, creating anomalies in the lettering such as serif distortions, fading inscriptions, or raised eye polish lines that swirl across the fields like fine scratches from a microscopic brush. And these tiny imperfections, when combined with larger striking errors, contribute to the coin's uniqueness because the more distinct characteristics a coin possesses, the more easily collectors can authenticate its one-of-a-kind status, and the more intensely auction excitement grows. And so, when you blend all of these possibilities together into a single 1992 P quarter, you begin to understand how the legend of a $15 million quarter emerges. Because collectors have always valued coins that tell dramatic stories through their flaws, and the more visual, the more extreme, and the more improbable those flaws, the higher collectors are willing to push the bidding. And beyond the physical attributes lies another essential element of value, which is the narrative itself, the fact that coins with mysterious origins and awe-striking errors become symbols of the rarest type of minting accident. And stories like these circulate through collector communities, online forums, auction previews, and expert discussions, gaining momentum and fueling the dream that someone, somewhere, may still come across this extraordinary 1992 P quarter hidden inside an old jar, tucked inside a forgotten purse, resting in a family coin tin, or lying unnoticed in a handful of change received during an average shopping trip. And this possibility of incredible discovery keeps collectors searching, analyzing, examining, and comparing every tiny deviation they find, driven by the tantalizing thought that the next coin they pick up might be the legendary one. The coin that transcends the realm of typical numismatic value and enters the unimaginable high-stakes world where a 25-cent piece rivals the price of rare paintings, vintage automobiles, diamond collections, and historic artifacts. And throughout this story, the coin becomes a symbol of how unpredictable and astonishing minting can be even in an era of machinery, automation, and precision engineering, proving that even modern coins can achieve mythical status if the right combination of errors happens at the right moment. And so we continue to explore the hypothetical layers of anomalies that give this coin its immense perceived value, envisioning die rotation combined with partial brockage imprint, where the coin captures the reverse image of another coin due to stacking mishaps in the striking chamber, or a scenario where the die cracks slightly during production, creating raised lines across Washington's neck or cheek that indicate metal flow and structural stress, turning the coin into a visual testimony of mint machinery under strain, which collectors find incredibly appealing because these indicators freeze a fleeting mechanical moment in time. And now imagine also the occurrence of die deterioration doubling, where repeated high-pressure strikes were down the die's surfaces, causing slightly spread letters or distorted numerals that give the date and inscriptions a stretched appearance, often misinterpreted by beginners, but highly prized when authenticated by experts. And in the case of the 1992 P quarter, this effect could sharpen the drama of its physical story, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already extraordinary coin. And so as we piece together all these extraordinary possibilities, the legend continues to grow, circulating in collector circles as an example of what might exist in the world of modern mint errors, fueling imagination. The next 1988 P quarter USA coin. Thank you for joining this exciting deep dive where we explore one of the most astonishing and captivating stories in modern coin collecting history. A tale that brings us face to face with a humble piece of circulating pocket change that turned into a jaw-dropping multi-million-dollar sensation. So settle in, enjoy the journey, and get ready for a wildly intriguing exploration of how an ordinary 1988 P quarter could soar to an unbelievable value of $15 million. Due to a combination of rare errors, striking anomalies, minting mishaps, and astonishing possibilities that make collectors' hearts race and imagination spin. Because today we're diving into a world where tiny details create massive fortunes and hidden treasures may be lurking right inside your change jar, coin rolls, or even the pockets of your jeans. And as we embark on this adventure together, smiling face with smiling eyes, let's unravel how an everyday quarter minted in Philadelphia, one of the most frequently used mints in the United States, could defy all expectations and become one of the most sought-after, mind-blowing rarities ever to exist. And as we go deeper into this exploration, we'll walk through the subtle mechanical mysteries, the strange minting oversights, The improbable scenarios, the inconsistent metal layers, the striking errors, the die misalignments, the double impressions, the transitional possibilities, the unintentional planchet variations, the machine fatigue, the pressure. Inconsistencies, the bizarre environmental interactions, the sharpness of engravings, and even hypothetical one-of-a-kind production quirks that collectors believe could theoretically push a coin into the multi-million-dollar tier, especially when combined with extreme rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and the powerful force of numismatic demand, which can transform the most unsuspecting coin into a legendary artifact worth more money than homes, cars, or entire lifetime savings. And so let's begin this long journey into what makes the 1988 P quarter such a fascinating subject of conversation, speculation, and collector enthusiasm. Starstruck, as enthusiasts imagine the perfect storm of conditions that might give rise to a $15 million unicorn coin. Starting with the deeply intricate world of minting technology during the late 1980s, when the mint was transitioning through different stages of die preparation and adjusting its equipment, all factors that could lead to unusual outcomes, including double dies where the image appears to be stamped twice, creating overlapping profiles of Washington's bust, or distorted lettering on Liberty, In God We Trust, or the year 1988 itself. And collectors love this possibility because doubling can occur in varying intensities, sometimes barely visible and sometimes dramatic enough to make the coin instantly iconic and immensely valuable, especially if the doubling is strong, clear, and affects multiple design elements that can be authenticated under magnification. And then we also have the compelling chance of a rare die clash where the obverse and reverse dies smash into each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghost-like traces of the reverse design faintly transferred onto the obverse die and vice versa, which can cause extremely haunting imagery that collectors absolutely adore. And if an exceptionally bold clash happened on a 1988 P quarter, especially one showing unmistakable outlines of the eagle from the reverse around Washington's portrait or lettering pressed into unexpected places, the value could skyrocket because dramatic clash die coins can become legendary, especially if the clash marks are bold, unmistakable, and unique, creating a one-of-a-kind effect that sets the coin apart in a dramatic fashion. And then comes the fascinating world of offsetter strikes where the coin is not perfectly aligned under the dies, causing the design to land partially outside the center. And these off-center errors can range from minor to extreme, with the most valuable being those that retain a fully visible date, because collectors crave an off-center mismatch that shows clear identity. And if a 1988 P quarter happened to have an extreme offsetter strike of maybe 60% to 80% while still preserving the date intact, that alone could place the coin among the rarest and most desirable U.S. mint mistakes in circulation, further increasing the theoretical multi-million-dollar perception, especially when the strike is crisp, well-defined, and aesthetically dramatic. And let's not forget the possibility of broad strikes where the collar fails to hold the coin in place, causing it to expand and flatten outward, giving the quarter a pancake-like appearance, with rim details stretching in unusual ways. And collectors love broad strikes that are dramatic and fully centered. And if the 1988 P quarter displayed a perfectly crisp broad strike with sharp details preserved despite the expansion, it could elevate the coin's desirability thanks to the visually striking appearance that makes it unmistakably rare and instantly attractive. And even more exciting is the idea of a double denomination strike, one of the rarest mint errors imaginable, in which a quarter design accidentally gets struck on a planchet previously imprinted with another denomination, like a dime or even a nickel, causing two different coin designs to coexist on the same piece of metal. And if a 1988 P quarter were mistakenly struck on a previously minted dime or nickel planchet, showing traces of both designs overlapping, that alone could place it in ultra-rare error categories that routinely sell for six-figure prices at major auctions. And with the added hype, narrative, and uniqueness attributed to this particular year and mint mark, dreamers and storytellers might imagine that such a coin could be hyped to astronomically high values, even reaching theoretical amounts like $15 million face with open mouth, because rarity, storytelling, and collector passion often merge in spectacular ways in numismatics. And then there's the intriguing possibility of a transitional error, one of the most expensive types of mint mistakes ever recorded, which occurs when a coin is struck using a metal composition intended for a different year. And while the 1988 quarter did not officially have a composition shift, hypothetical scenarios can arise in which leftover planchets from previous years or experimental planchets from test batches accidentally slip through and get struck with the current year's dies, creating anomalies in metal composition, weight, coloration, or magnetic response, all of which send collectors into a frenzy because transitional errors are incredibly scarce, often selling for mind-blowing sums when authenticated. And if the 1988 P quarter somehow ended up minted on experimental or leftover planchet with a different composition, such as a copper-nickel variation, a different alloy mix, or even an off-spec weight, it would instantly become one of the most remarkable discovery pieces ever found, inspiring stories of unimaginable value. And layered on top of these dramatic possibilities comes the idea of a multiple strike error where the coin is hit more than once by the dies, creating overlapping layers of partial design elements, distorted lettering, multiple profiles of Washington's face, repeated strokes on the eagle's wings, and unusual flattening or stretching on areas of the rim. And if a 1988 P quarter showcased a dramatic multiple strike misalignment where the repeated impressions are clear, bold, and visually mesmerizing, the coin could easily become a showpiece worth massive sums, especially if the additional strikes are off-center, rotated, or drastically misaligned, creating an almost surreal sculptural effect that collectors would treat like numismatic art. And another captivating scenario involves the possibility of wrong planchet strikes, where a quarter design is imprinted on a planchet never intended for quarters, such as one used for foreign coin production. Because the U.S. Mint occasionally struck coins for other countries, and mix-ups could theoretically occur, leading to mismatched planchet sizes, colors, thicknesses, or metal compositions, giving rise to extraordinary rarities that gain immediate attention and immense value, especially when the anomaly is dramatic and unmistakable. And paired with all these incredible minting possibilities are the die-related anomalies like die breaks, die chips. The next 1997 P quarter USA coin today as we dive into one of the most astonishing and captivating stories in the world of coin collecting. A journey that blends mystery, rarity, historical intrigue, and the thrill of discovering unimaginable value in something as small and ordinary as a simple 25-cent coin. Because today we're exploring the unbelievable tale of the 1997 P quarter dollar that is said by collectors and treasure hunters alike to be worth an astonishing $15 million due to a remarkable set of unusual errors, minting anomalies, freak occurrences, and rare combinations of circumstances that elevate it from a typical coin you might receive in pocket change to a legendary artifact that collectors whisper about with fascination, excitement, and relentless curiosity. And as we unfold this fascinating story, we'll explore how this seemingly ordinary 1997 P quarter could contain layers of hidden possibilities that make it one of the most desirable finds in modern numismatics. Beginning with the fact that the Philadelphia Mint in 1997 was operating at extremely high production levels, often pushing machinery close to its limits and increasing the likelihood of rare mechanical mishaps that could lead to extraordinary mint errors that the public only learns about decades later. And among these potential errors are off-center strikes so dramatic that the design elements shift into unexpected places, double-struck impressions that create ghost-like overlays, broad-struck misalignments where the collar fails to hold the planchet correctly, clipped planchets formed when the metal strip is punched improperly, and transitional anomalies caused by leftover metal compositions from previous minting cycles, each one representing a unique chapter in the unpredictable world of minting technology. And when all these possibilities are combined into a single coin, they create the perfect recipe for something so spectacularly rare that collectors would be willing to pay millions just to own it. Because rarity in numismatics is not just about how many coins exist, but about how improbable their existence truly is, especially when a coin reflects multiple errors layered on top of each other in ways that seem almost impossible to replicate intentionally. And when stories began circulating about a 1997 P quarter with an extraordinary series of overlapping mistakes that escaped the usual quality control checkpoints, the collecting world erupted. with speculation, debate, and excitement as experts examined potential photographs, descriptions, and eyewitness account from those who claim to have encountered the coin firsthand, insisting that the 1997 P quarter in question displayed a dramatic misstrike that pushed Washington's portrait far off its normal alignment, giving the coin an unusual diagonal orientation that immediately caught attention, followed by a secondary faint impression of lettering from a double strike that appeared, rotated in a way that could only occur if the coin flipped slightly inside the press between strikes, creating a layered, almost three-dimensional visual effect that seasoned collectors drool over. And beyond this, the reverse side reportedly contained an ambiguous transition error that suggested a possibility that the coin had been struck on a leftover planchet intended for a different denomination or year, which, if confirmed, would catapult its value into the stratosphere. Because transitional errors are among the most coveted in existence, often arising when the mint changes metal composition or switches production lines, and a few stray planchets from previous batches get fed into the machinery without detection, leading to coins that break every expectation of what should have been minted that year. And for 1997, this means that if a stray nickel planchet, cent planchet, experimental alloy, or foreign coin planchet was struck with quarter dies, the resulting coin would not only display incomplete details and strange weight discrepancies, but would also represent a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly so exceptional that major auction houses would be lining up to fight over the right to present it. And due to such extraordinary scenarios, it became easy for collectors to imagine a world in which a single 1997 P quarter could be valued at $15 million, not simply for its rarity, but for its mythic status. Because when a coin becomes the subject of legend, speculation, and relentless fascination, it transcends mere metal and becomes a historical artifact, a financial marvel, and a storytelling treasure all at once, with collectors valuing not only the physical piece, but the narrative surrounding its discovery, its escape from the mint, and the near-miraculous sequence of events that kept it preserved long enough for the world to marvel at it. And as more details surfaced about the coin's supposed appearance, including unusually soft peripheral devices hinting at a broad strike, uneven rim thickness suggesting collar failure, and faint doubling around the motto indicating a possible machine vibration issue during striking, the legend only grew larger as enthusiasts began theorizing additional layers of possibilities, including a potential die break or cud forming along the upper rim that may have generated a raised, irregular blob of metal that distorted the design in a highly recognizable way. And cud errors are extremely popular because they show the moment a die begins to fail, leaving behind a permanent scar on all coins struck thereafter until the die is replaced. And if the 1997 P quarter had a massive cud combined with a misaligned die and an off-center strike, it would create one of the most visually dramatic effects imaginable, making it instantly recognizable even to novice collectors. But the excitement does not stop there, because rumors also described a possibility of a rotated die error, meaning that the front and back images of the coin might not align correctly when flipped, instead revealing an unexpected rotation that makes the coin structurally unique. And rotated die errors possess a strong following among specialists, since they represent mechanical malfunction at the deepest operational level of the minting process. And when combined with other errors, they drastically increase a coin's desirability, pushing collectors into frenzies to locate the most extreme examples. And some accounts even speculated that the mysterious 1997 P quarter might have a dramatic strike-through error where foreign material, such as cloth fibers, metal shavings, or grease accidentally came between the die and planchet, leading to indentations or texture patterns embedded directly into the coin's surface, giving it a mysterious, almost alien appearance that makes it stand out instantly from all ordinary coins and feeds into the belief that this particular piece was never meant to exist in the first place. And as stories circulated of a collector who allegedly uncovered the coin in a forgotten hoard or possibly in an old bankroll untouched for decades, the myth of the $15 million value became a sensation, encouraging treasure hunters to inspect their change, search old jars, sift through inherited collections, and scour the corners of antique shops, hoping that they too might stumble upon a coin with similar anomalies that could change their lives overnight. And the power of this belief reveals why. Certain coins achieve mythical valuations because the market is influenced not only by documented sales and expert appraisals, but also by the outsized emotional impact of possibility. The hope that something ordinary could become extraordinary, that a tiny disk of metal could transform a person's fortune simply because the universe aligned in an improbable sequence of minting accidents at precisely the right moment in history. In the 1997, P quarter symbolizes this dream more than most because it hails from a modern era where quality control systems should theoretically eliminate such extreme mistakes, meaning that any coin escaping with multiple overlapping errors becomes all the more astonishing. And collectors know that modern multi-error pieces are far rarer than their older counterparts, which is why this legendary coin has attracted so much imagination and speculation, leading to deep discussions about metallurgical analysis, die-state study, strike sequence theory, and the chaos that sometimes occurs when high-speed minting machinery operates under intense production pressure. And through this fascination, the coin has evolved from a simple quarter into a symbol of rarity, luck, and the thrilling uncertainty of the minting world, inspiring countless collectors to look deeper, research more passionately. Last 1996 quarter dollar USA coin today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing, mind-bending, and almost unbelievable stories in the world of rare coins, a tale that continues to fascinate collectors, treasure hunters, researchers, and enthusiasts across the globe. And today we're exploring the mysterious and captivating legend of the 1966 P quarter dollar that has become the center of endless speculation, numismatic curiosity, and jaw-dropping astonishment because this seemingly ordinary coin, struck during a transitional era of American coin production, has been rumored and retold in countless collector circles as one of the most valuable era quarters ever imagined, with stories describing examples, sometimes just one, sometimes more, allegedly selling or being valued at around $15 million due to a combination of unique mistakes, strange production anomalies, minting imperfections, and hypothetical scenarios that make the coin feel like a piece of inaccessible treasure, a type of rarity so extraordinary that its very existence blurs the line between myth and reality. So today we're taking you deep into the world of these possibilities, exploring how collectors have imagined the rarest forms of this coin, the types of mint errors that would need to exist to justify such a massive price tag, the conditions under which such mistakes could have occurred, and why the 1966 P quarter occupies such an unusual space in the minds of those who dream about discovering hidden fortune in their pocket change, because the story always begins in 1965-1966, a turbulent period for the United States Mint as it transitioned away from silver coins and into new copper-nickel-clad compositions, a time when production demands were sky-high, when the Mint was under pressure to push out millions upon millions of coins to relieve a national shortage, which meant that quality control slipped at times, experimental planchets appeared in the wrong presses. Transitional errors happened, and dies were stretched beyond their intended lifespans, producing coins that collectors still hunt for today. And since 1966 quarters lack a mint mark due to the Mint's attempt to discourage coin hoarding, the Philadelphia Mint's creations from that year carry only the subtle clues of their birthplace, leaving open a massive space for speculation about mistakes that could have taken place. And this is where the legend of the multi-million-dollar 1966 P quarter truly comes alive, because people imagine a scenario where extraordinary errors converge in a single coin, where a double-struck, misaligned die, off-metal, wrong planchet, broad-struck, full brockage, die clash, or transitional composition anomaly results in a one-of-a-kind piece of numismatic history that collectors hunger for, and the idea of a 1966 P struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet immediately becomes one of the most discussed possibilities, especially since leftover silver blanks from pre-1965 production could theoretically remain in mint storage bins, slipping by unnoticed during a time of accelerated minting. And imagine further that such a coin not only escaped into circulation, but found itself preserved in extraordinary condition, surviving decades with its luster intact, the faint shimmering glow of misused, out-of-place silver catching the eye of a trained collector. And this scenario alone could spark tremendous value. But the legends don't stop there, because enthusiasts imagine other mind-blowing possibilities, such as a 1966 P quarter struck on a foreign planchet intended for a completely different country, as the mint occasionally produced coins for nations abroad, and the idea of a quarter ending up on a thinner, lighter, or heavier metal blank intended for another government fuels excitement, especially if the strike was crisp, the date extremely bold, and the error undeniable to even a novice observer. And collectors also imagine a broad strike error so dramatic that the coin appears stretched outward like a warped steel ring, the rim non-existent, and the design elements pushing outward in ghost-like fashion, yet remaining perfectly readable, or a double strike rotated 180 degrees between strikes, so that Washington's profile appears to have two overlapping faces, one normal and one shadowed, creating an eerie, unforgettable appearance unlike anything produced under normal mint conditions, and the speculation amplifies with theories about a full reverse brockage error, where one quarter was mistakenly pressed against another coin, leaving a mirrored impression so perfect and centered that the coin almost looks like a sculptural art piece rather than currency. And people imagine such a brockage occurring during the transitional clad era, making it even more rare, or perhaps a multiple strike error where the planchet was fed incorrectly several times, leading to layered impressions of letters and numbers stacked like geological strata, showing the chaotic violence of the minting machinery gone out of rhythm. And then there are die cap fantasies where a planchet became trapped on a die and began stamping subsequent coins with distorted, mushroom-like shapes before finally being ejected itself, leaving an ultra-rare cap coin with stretched metal rising upward like a tiny silver volcano. And imagining such a cap coin with a clear 1966 date sends collectors into endless discussion, but the scenario that pushes the fictional $15 million valuation into mythical status often revolves around the concept of a quadruple error coin, a coin simultaneously struck on an experimental planchet, double struck off-center, with a dramatic clipped planchet area, and showing a visible die clash ghosting through both sides of the coin. Because such a combination of errors would be so overwhelmingly unlikely that its existence would surpass logic, and yet these stories fuel the imagination, making collectors carefully inspect every 1966 quarter they encounter, as if one day someone might uncover the ultimate mistake, the once-in-a-century anomaly that slipped through unnoticed. And woven into this narrative is the idea that the 1966 P quarter was minted at a time of urgency, when presses ran constantly, dies were polished hastily, and operators had little time to pause and correct issues. And so a cascading error, one mistake compounding another, becomes easier for collectors to imagine. And in these mental scenarios, a coin struck on a wrong metal planchet with a massive off-center strike that still displays a full date could electrify the hobby, because a fully readable date on an off-center error dramatically increases desirability. And when people combine this with a missing clad layer, creating a coin that appears half copper, half nickel, or even entirely copper-colored across one surface, the fantasy of discovering an ultra-rare piece becomes stronger, and the thought of a double denominated error, where a quarter was mistakenly overstruck on a previously minted dime or cent, capturing the ghostly outline of another coin beneath the quarter design, only amplifies the sense of wonder, and collectors imagine the raised letters of a previous denomination peeking through Washington's portrait, creating a layered patchwork of United States mint history in one bizarre artifact. And then there's the intriguing idea of a mule error, where the reverse of the quarter is paired with the obverse of another denomination entirely, such as a dime or half dollar. Even though such an occurrence for 1966 will be almost impossibly rare, yet this hypothetical scenario fuels the mystique, especially when you combine it with the era's transitional chaos. And to make the legend even more intense, people imagine such a mule error being discovered in pristine condition, as though preserved perfectly from the moment it was struck, stored away unintentionally, only to resurface decades later in an unassuming coin collection inherited by someone unaware of its extraordinary significance. And from there, the tale continues with collectors discussing not just the errors, but the conditions that would have preserved such a coin, perhaps sealed in a forgotten drawer, a factory box,